Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. We invite coaches, athletes, and industry leaders in our community who are willing to open up about their setbacks and successes to help educate and inspire our listeners. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn, and today's episode we have Wendy Hilliard. Now, Wendy is an incredibly accomplished athlete, coach, and advocate of the sport of gymnastics, along with many other sports. I'm going to go through her bio a little bit so you get a background of who she is. She's a little bit different than the normal guests that we normally have on, but I really want you to get a chance to actually know all of her accomplishments. She was the first Black woman to represent the U.S. on the Rhythmic Gymnastics Team. She competed in 3 World Championships, 1 Olympic trials, and then she went on to coach, and she became a 4-time national team coach and coached an Olympian back in 1996 at the Atlanta Games. She was inducted into the USAG Hall of Fame back in 2008, and she was also the first Black woman and gymnast to be president of the Women's Sports Foundation. She also started the Wendy Hilliard Gymnastics Foundation 25 years ago in Harlem, and it basically helps underserved communities in that New York City, Harlem area, and now Detroit as a second city, which was her home city, to give athletes and kids in those areas access to gymnastics. The program is free and has now served over 25,000 athletes over the course of the last 25 years and growing. She's had a variety of other positions within the USOC and within USA Gymnastics and has been an advocate not only for the sport of gymnastics, but sports in general her entire life. We're incredibly lucky to have Wendy on the podcast. We are great friends with her, what she's doing to help build the sport of gymnastics and give people access, not only access, but also building champions, which I think was something that she touches on within the episode that I really appreciated. She's giving access and helping to build some of the best athletes that we have within the country within the sport of rhythmic gymnastics. She's an incredible ambassador. I hope that you guys get something out of this episode and learn a little bit more about what she's doing. Enjoy. So, Wendy, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I do appreciate it.
Of course. So before we get into it, I mean, our normal listeners come very heavily from the CrossFit and fitness world, and we want to make sure they know your background. It's so incredible what you've done as an athlete, and then moving on to all the things that you've done within the sport world over the past few decades. Can you just try as best you can with it? You know, we could take the whole hour and just kind of go through your background, but give our listeners a little bit about where you came from in terms of how you grew up into sport, and then kind of how it led you to what you're doing now.
Well, I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and proud Detroiter. And so actually in the gymnastics, so I just saw gymnastics like on TV on the Olympics or something. I wanted to do it, but they didn't really have gymnastics in the city of Detroit at the time. So I just went downtown to the Y and I started tumbling. So I was actually a tumbler first and had some pretty good tumblers on our team. And then I went out to the suburbs to take artistic gymnastics. And when I was out there, I was taken at the Jewish Community Center, and they had these 4 coaches from Ukraine, basically former Soviet Union. And I started taking gymnastics there, but my mother was like, you know, it's costly. It's so interesting. It costs, I think, $500 for the year. She was like, this is expensive for the year. She's like, I'm not paying $500.
Go back to those times.
Yeah. But so she said, so she called the recreation center or in Detroit, and the head of the recreation department was a former boxer, very interesting. And he hired these coaches to teach at the recreation department. So all of a sudden we had these great master sport coaches. One was artistic, one was rhythmic, one was acro sport, and 2 rhythmic. And so we started this team called the Detroit Metro Gymnasts. We all practice in the recreation center. It cost me like $20 a year.
Wow.
To take gymnastics, but they had these great coaches. So all of a sudden we had this very good team. The rhythmic team especially was like 1 or 2 in the country all the time. I was the first Black to compete for the U.S. in rhythmic gymnastics. We started it, my coach Zina Marinoff, who passed away, we always argued about this. She said she introduced me to rhythmic, but I said I didn't know anything about rhythmic. So you hired me, that was so fabulous. But at any rate, I started rhythmic. And they were recruiting because it was right when rhythmic was becoming an Olympic sport. So all of the national team during my time, we were all former artistic gymnasts. So I started rhythmic. I made the national team as the first Black to compete. I competed in 3 World Championships. I was on the national team for like 10 years. And so in rhythmic, and Then after I retired, so I did make the Olympic trials in 84. I missed the Olympic trials in 88 by .01. You know
Oh,
what
geez.
that's like.
Yep.
So I retired, but I had moved to New York by this time. I was training with Lucy Anowska, now Lucy Nixon, and I started performing a lot, right? So Christopher Harrison and Andrew Patchwood started Anti-Gravity. So a lot of New Yorker, the gymnasts, we were here and we were doing all different things. So we started this Anti-Gravity gymnastics company and did a lot of performing. I did Broadway. It was really wonderful time. And then also during that time, I did a lot of performing, like with the Olympic tours, even starting back in '84. So I did a lot of performing. I did the professional tour with Kurt Thomas back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
So I did a lot of performing outside of competing. And then I started coaching. My way of surviving in New York, instead of like working at a restaurant, I was teaching gymnastics, right? So I started coaching. So my athlete, Aliane Baquerot Wilson, now Aliane Wilson, made the Olympics in '96. And when that happened, during this time, I was also on the US board as the chair of the Athletes Council. So it really was an interesting time. I was on their board of directors and their executive board, and then became vice chair of Rhythmic. But that time was being an advocate for the athletes was really important to me. And it also, led me to really coming with the Women's Sports Foundation. So at the time, the Women's Sports Foundation was one of the few organizations that gave money to help support athletes. So I got a grant and they said, you can either pay it back or volunteer and join the Women's Sports Foundation. I did, but eventually I became the president. So 95, 96, I became president of the Women's Sports Foundation. So this was a lot of time of being an advocate for all athletes. And then I decided after Aliane went to train for the Olympic Games, I started my own gymnastics foundation. It had been almost 10 years since I retired. And what happened is that there weren't really many more Blacks in gymnastics. It was very expensive because of the privatization of gymnastics. So I started my foundation in 1996 to provide free and low cost gymnastics for kids. And we're still going. We're celebrating 25 years in a few months. Yeah. And so we've served, almost 25,000 kids. So what we figured out to do is to really make partnerships so that we could provide low cost gymnastics. And if you couldn't afford our low prices, then we give scholarships to people. Our team, about 30 kids with 3 competitive teams, one rhythmic gymnastics, girls artistic, and tumbling and trampoline. And so we have figured out a way to provide gymnastics for all these kids. It's been really great. It's been really tough this last year. But yeah, keeping everybody together because we expanded to Detroit, my hometown, in 2016, and both, Detroit and Harlem, New York City were very hard hit by the pandemic. So it's been very rough, but we've managed in New York, especially to keep our team kids going just by going to different gyms. That's where we have like 4 different gyms that we go to keep the team kids because, other gymnastic schools, they were open this summer and my kids were able to go. So at any rate, we're here. And during the time I did mention, after the foundation, I worked for New York for the New York City sports. We were bid for the Olympics, NYC 2012. So I was the director of sports. So I really learned a lot about all, putting the Olympics together and basically everything having to do with sports. And you remember because we were there, we went to London.
Oh, yeah.
And we went to London in one way to see, okay, how did London do it? We didn't win, whatever, but I was able to go to gymnastics. I was saying, Sadie, when Gabby Douglas won.
Oh yeah, she wanted me to make sure I brought that up too. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's really wonderful to have so many friends in gymnastics over the years. I've been able to work with so many great athletes, and it's just fun, like what you're doing, to go on to expand beyond gymnastics to do other things because of what it gave us as athletes. But it's a really wonderful community of folks that support each other. And, I've just been enjoying kind of providing it for other youth, but I really call on, I thank you guys for supporting us too. I call on a lot of people because it requires me to raise money all the time.
Absolutely. And, yeah, I mean, and it's such an incredible cause that you've kind of championed over the last couple of decades. And, what you're doing is so important for the community. I've been able to see it firsthand, what you're doing up in New York, and it's incredible. I mean, to be able to see how great the facility is running and how many people you're impacting at such a high level. And I want to get into the foundation a little bit, but I want to start a little bit more on your background as an athlete and talk about getting into the sport of gymnastics is already challenging, limited resources. It's especially when you were coming up, I'm sure there weren't that many opportunities for access to gymnastics in a city like Detroit, let alone rhythmic gymnastics. And you brought it up a little bit about how you became exposed to it, but what kind of tipped you towards rhythmic gymnastics over artistic, being that it is predominantly such a white sport? And like, what stood out to you in terms of why you wanted to become a rhythmic gymnast? And did you feel like you had natural talent for that specific sport since it's so unique?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's hard to say. I mean, the only thing I really knew, I'd only seen maybe rhythmic gymnastics live once, when the Russians would come and do their performances, they bring a couple rhythmic gymnasts. So it was more the fact that Xena was a master sport in rhythmic. So rhythmic is extremely popular in the former Soviet Union and Russia. It's like the number one sport for girls. So she was a master, and she was just, she was a great coach. And it was an opportunity because, let's see, why I chose it over artistic. I mean, I love artistic gymnastics, but it was kind of something new, right? It was music. It was her specialty. And so when you find something new, by the time I started rhythmic, I already had this background in gymnastics, but it was more for the fact that it was more an opportunity. It was just kind of luck that she was such a great coach. And there was one other team in the suburbs of Detroit that had rhythmic for a while, and then all their girls came over to our team. So it was more lucky that I chose rhythmic. And then once I did, it was totally exciting. It was a really wonderful opportunity to go to this new venture, because remember, now it's just becoming an Olympic sport. So we had to do a lot to promote rhythmic gymnastics and do a lot of performing. And it was more for the fact that I had a great coach. That's why I started rhythmic.
Mm-hmm. Was that something that led you to eventually want to become a coach yourself? To coach Aliane, or was that kind of not a natural fit coming from the athletic world? We always find it interesting, people going from the athletic world to coaching. Did you feel it was kind of natural for you?
It was for me, but it was interesting because Xena told me, I'll never forget. She said, we started teaching because we're in the recreation department. And so when we were young, even while I was competing, we would like teach the beginners and things like that. And she did tell me, she says, you're going to be a better athlete if you learn to coach. Because you have to figure out how to tell someone to do something.
Right.
And it did make a difference. So I've been coaching a long time, even when I was an athlete. And she is right, because when I started coaching really hard, I called Xena and I apologized. And I said, coaching is so hard. Mm-hmm. And every time I said no, and I was always asking her questions, she's like, Vindy, why are you always asking questions? And so that was maybe why I was going to become a coach. But I don't think people realize how challenging coaching is. Not everybody can coach. But it was kind of natural for me. I had really great gymnasts. Aliane was a very coachable athlete, I must say. Very funny, because she was very young when she started with me. And I saw that she had potential, but being coachable, I don't think people understand what a gift that is. People don't understand that if people can soak it in and take direction well and have a really good temperament, which is really important to be successful. So it wasn't natural. Coaching is very tough.
Yeah.
And, I was like, so we're training. So if I'm an athlete, elite athlete in rhythmic, I'm training like 6 hours a day, right? 6 days a week, whatever. And then when you coach, you have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like back in the gym.
Yeah,
and we were coaching in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. And so, after 15 years of that, I was like, okay.
Chad, that sounds so much like the way that you approach it too, right? I've heard you say almost verbatim that same thing about coaching and being able to be a good coach is understanding how to first be a good athlete and be able to verbalize some of those things. Would you agree that that's kind of something that you've taken away from being a good athlete and transitioning out of coaching?
Absolutely. I was just thinking the same thing and getting excited listening to Wendy explain that, for sure. Because, a lot of times, either an athlete or coach that comes to one of my clinics will ask what the differences are, or I'm advertising it as an athlete clinic, and there's a coach that says, well, I'll wait till you have a coaching clinic. And I'm like, well, honestly, there's not really that much difference at all. I may say a few little things here and there a little bit different, but they're pretty much the same. You're getting the same material either way, because as an athlete and the coach, you need to have, all of the information and absolutely coaching. Even just after a couple months of coaching, I became a significantly better athlete, better technique wise, with a better understanding of the movement and everything else, and better competitor as well. But I wanted to touch, Wendy, if you will, maybe just for those listeners out there that may not know completely or at all what the differences are, some of the differences are between the different types of gymnastics. You guys are talking about rhythmic and artistic, because for me as a weightlifter, if I say weightlifter, a lot of people are going to think maybe I'm a bodybuilder or a power lifter, when in fact I'm an Olympic style weightlifter. And I just wonder for you guys, is it similar? Because I almost get offended as an Olympic style weightlifter if someone calls me a power lifter and especially a bodybuilder. So I wonder if it's the same for you guys. If I say that you're a trampolinist, are you offended?
Oh, is that one for me? Well, it's twofold. As a rhythmic gymnast, I had to spend a lot of time explaining what we did. So rhythmic gymnastics is movement with or on apparatus. That's kind of like the terminology of it. So artistic gymnasts work on apparatus, right? On the bounce beam, on the uneven bars, on the bars, on the rings. Same for trampoline or tumbling. But rhythmic gymnasts work with apparatus. So what we have to do is basically keep the synchronization, the hand-eye coordination, and then you add music to it. So it is gymnastics, and it's very interesting because people always ask, it looks like dance. I'm like, it ain't dance, but let me tell you, it is dance, because dancers can look in the mirror and do their stuff, but we have to look everywhere else to try to catch our stuff. So rhythmic gymnastics, which historically, I don't think people understand this, back in the day, probably in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and maybe the 50s a little bit, all of the artistic gymnasts had to do like a group routine, a rhythmic gymnastics routines, right? So they did beam and bars, and then they did a group like ball routine. So that's where rhythmic kind of came from. It came from artistic gymnastics. And so, yeah, I had to explain it a lot. I mean, so I'm walking around and playing with a hoop. It's like, why do you have a hoop? Are you in the circus? Like, no, I'm a rhythmic gymnast. It was like constant. And we're not, we're one of the minor sports. So people, and it's interesting, even in gymnastics, I always explain it too, but they say it's just gymnastics. But artistic gymnastics, which is, I don't know why the terminology in English is different, because in Russian, artistic gymnastics is rhythmic, which makes sense. Right. But I'm not so much offended. And I have, in our gym, I mentioned we have tumbling and trampoline. And so it's just understanding that there are all these disciplines. I've learned to love and respect all of them, and they're just different. But you just got to do what you got to do. So rhythmic is with apparatus, other gymnastics is on apparatus.
Nice. Very simple.
I think most people who don't know gymnastics will think of rhythmic gymnastics as Will Ferrell's portrayal of it in old school, of him on the floor with the ribbon, like dancing around, like I guess that's rhythmic gymnastics.
That's literally all. That's literally all that's going on in my mind right now, Dave. That's all I can see when you say rhythmic gymnastics. So, but that's fair, right? That's fair.
He's exposing a new sport. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny because one of our first events when I was director of sports for the Olympic bid was the national championships for weightlifting. And nice. So it's very, very cool. And it's Tara Knott, right? So she was going to be a champion and Olympic, and she was a gymnast, I think, first.
Yep.
There's some kind of connection between gymnastics and weightlifting, something about the flexibility and stuff. But I was kind of surprised. I didn't expect that correlation between gymnastics and weightlifting. But so.
Well, for females in particular, and Dave will agree with this. He'll tell you that male gymnasts don't so much transfer over to weightlifting near as well as the females do. I don't, we have some thoughts, but I don't know the complete answer behind that. But certainly there are so many high level female gymnasts and any level female gymnasts that really transfer into weightlifting very well. And of course, Tara Knott being our first female gold medalist, I think she also played a lot of soccer as well. So she had quite a combination of athletic skills that transferred very well.
Yeah, men's gymnastics, don't ever look for a men's gymnast really. I know there's been like Jake Dalton and Steve Legendre have tried to transfer over to do some weightlifting, but it's a rarity. I mean, most gymnast legs, at least mine, kind of bird legs. They're not meant to lift anything more than maybe the baby that's upstairs in my house. That's about as much as I'm going to be lifting.
Yeah.
Really quickly though, Wendy, you mentioned the 2012 Olympic bid that New York was going after, and not getting it, London getting the 2012 games. I have a few questions in that because I think it's kind of interesting. One, do you actually think that New York can host an Olympic Games with the way that it's set up? Like today, do you think that it could?
I do.
Really?
Yeah, and here's the reason. So we had this whole plan, and I spent, I was working with them probably 6 or 7 years. The key that New York has, and which people don't understand, is the infrastructure. And when you talk about it now, to move usually for the Olympics, so many people that come in, we are used to doing big events. I mean, when with pre-COVID, before the ball drops, we have 1 million people in Times Square. We have the tennis. We're used to moving around a lot of people. We have hotel rooms. We have that kind of infrastructure here, which is why London actually was good. They had an infrastructure that makes a difference. And New York would, surprisingly, I mean, of course I had to, kind of put this down, but we had a really great plan of doing it in New York. And the thing that was tough for us was the Olympic Stadium. That's always kind of the biggest thing. Olympic stadiums are even larger than most football stadiums because of the track and field. And so making that transition is always the hardest thing. And that's what got us. It was a big political thing because we wanted to put it on the West Side and they didn't want to do it. And that's that part of it from a political standpoint. That was our major challenge per se. But then on the other hand, it's politics. We don't talk about all the other stuff that goes on with running the Olympic Games, but actually running the Olympics, I think New York would have done a great job.
So do you think that in the future, New York will would be encouraged by the citizens and the people that live there to actually put a bid forward again at some point?
That's
whatever comes about.
It kind of came out, LA is going to do 28. Yeah. We'll see. There's going to be such a change now with the Olympics, as you can see. I mean, the process is very expensive and it costs a lot of money. So, it's going through this change in the Olympics. Countries and cities are not going to want to put in that type of investment usually. So I do think actually New York would be more likely to be able to host it because we have the infrastructure.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but on the other end, getting people to buy into it, and New Yorkers are pretty, you're like, we want to do it. You got to convince New Yorkers, like,
oh yeah.
But I would say that as a city, we would, and you'll see as there's going to be a lot of changes moving forward about how the Olympic movement moves forward with bidding for cities.
That makes sense. Now, speaking of 2012, London did win those games, and you were both out there together. And I from my experience, I was at 2004 in Athens, 2008 in Beijing, and then 2012 in London. And I thought London was the best Olympic Games I've ever been to, and possibly, I know people speak really highly about the Sydney Games in 2000, about how that was run, but I thought London was fantastic. I thought the venues were just like out of sight, being able to access things pretty easily from the tube, and I just thought they did a phenomenal job.
They really did.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, I'm like, man, I don't know if another city can pull this off the way that London did. But you're speaking about the gymnastics competition. As I mentioned earlier, Sadie, it made me bring this up because it's still so kind of imprinted on her brain, this whole moment. 2012 was the first time that a Black female athlete won the all-around gold medal. Gabby Douglas won, and you had a chance to actually witness that in person. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to actually be in the stands to watch Gabby break down some barriers there, and such a milestone within the women's movement, what you're trying to do as an athlete, as an advocate for the sport, and to be able to see that in person actually happen?
It was amazing. It was really, I mean, and London, which was great, but the tickets were tough. Thank you, David, because it was at gymnastics. I was like, oh my gosh, Gabby's going, I'm trying to get tickets, it was very tough. But to be there, it was so incredible because I'll give you a little backstory. So Gabby had competed at the American Cup at Madison Square Garden months before. It was like an alternate. So I, doing what I did, I had like 100 kids go down there to go see it. Like,
I was commentating that, I remember.
Yeah, so I had my kids, and then Gabby, and I saw Gabby, and I was like, who is this? I'm like, she's on it. And I'll be honest with you, this is a big thing, and a lot of Black athletes will understand this. I said, oh my gosh, I think she can win the Olympics. And this was, I don't know, 3 months or 4 months ahead of time, because the pressure wasn't on. Remember, Jordan Weber was the world champion. And so when you don't have the pressure on you in one way, it gives you a little bit less release. The Olympics is really tough. But I said, also, the fact that she wasn't in the US, it's a little harder for Black athletes in the US. You guys have been through this past year. The Black Lives Matter issue is a lot, and it's a lot that we went through as athletes. And in my head, I said, oh, we're going to be in Europe. It's going to be different. So when we got to London, it was so incredible, because the pressure, I think Sadie will probably tell you, you could just feel it. It was so intense, right? She's on the balance beam. Gabby balance beam wasn't her thing, but if you want to win Olympics, you can't fall, you can't make a mistake. When she got through that, but I can say the whole audience was really pulling for her. It was kind of strange. You could just tell. Well, people are like, oh my gosh, she's going, because the Russians were right there. But it was interesting because we were sitting, so there was some coach sitting really close to us, and she was talking about, they were doing calculations, right, as we we're going along. And the athlete that was going on floor didn't have the same difficulty level as Gabby did, right? Because floor was her last one, but it was off the chain. It was like so incredible. It was, to be there to witness that, I will never forget, and I'm just so grateful that I was able to see that happen, because it was groundbreaking. It was amazing.
Yeah, and it's led to quite a swell in the participation levels of Black athletes within artistic gymnastics. Obviously, being able to say, not only is access something that I can actually find now, but I can see someone, representation at that level. I can see someone in the footsteps that I'm trying to follow in, and there's no one better than Simone Biles, who now is the goddess of all sport, who kind of is doing things that even the men are like, how is this even possible for a human being to be able to do some of these things? What do you think about Simone and what she's doing in terms of pushing barriers within the sport right now?
Oh, and every gymnast, but now all athletes get it. I think gymnasts understand how hard what she's doing is.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, and the fact that she's been able to survive so long. I mean, we appreciate that her physical body, right? Her size, her ratio, or all of her strength is always amazing, but it's her head. And you guys know that.
Yep.
As an athlete, no one can concentrate. Sometimes I just watch her to watch her eyes to see how she competes so well, like always so cool and calm and just kind of does it, which is under the pressure. So that combination of having such physical talent, great training, obviously, great coaching, but also her mental ability to concentrate like that, and her air awareness, to be so calm and to do it is just amazing. And everyone, you have to say, she is the best athlete. People say it's true. She really is the best athlete right now because of what she's so far ahead of everybody in her sport.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I will have to say that Simone has really been such an advocate. She is so powerful, and it's not easy to do that as a top athlete. And and the pressure of social media, all that kind of stuff. Everybody talking. She has done such a great job of expressing herself and coming when issues come up to be really honest and to handle that. That's pretty amazing, and also rare that an athlete can have that much impact from issues that happen within the world outside of her sport, and then also just to be able to be so dominant in her sport.
She actually made some headlines this past week after I think SportsCenter, ESPN put out a little image basically saying, the GOATs, the greatest of all time. And it was essentially just a bunch of male athletes, Jordan and LeBron and Muhammad Ali and a bunch of athletes. And Simone came. I think there was an image of Serena Williams somewhere in the background, like you could barely see her face, right? And Simone came out and said, like, who put this together? Like, how can you have this image of the greatest of all time and leave out so many, women that are deservedly need to be in this photo as well? First, I think she's right. I mean, how can you have something like that and just especially if you bring in like one female athlete and like, we acknowledge that this is not just a male thing, and then leave out so many others that are deserving. What do you think about her comments with regards to, I don't know if you saw it actually, but what do you think about her comments?
I did. Right on. He was right on. And you know what's so great is that we have someone of her stature that can say that. Like if
Right.
Simone Biles is saying it, y'all better listen.
Yeah.
And it was like so obvious. And sometimes that's what gets frustrating, especially for female athletes, you know, women's sports. I'm like, come on, y'all, it's 2021. Seriously?
Right.
Seriously. I mean, and you guys, you talk about soccer, and the women's soccer team in the US has been like crazy, winning everything for this last time. I'm like, come on. It was like one of those things where y'all should be ashamed of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That was so crazy. But thank you that Simone could bring it out there. And that's the kind of power she has. And to be able to have that kind of power and still train like that, that's not easy. You know?
Yeah. And for her specifically, it's interesting because I think she's almost a new generation of what an athlete at that level can look like in women's gymnastics, because up to this point, it's always been, you know, 15 and 16-year-old girls that are kind of closed off from the ability to kind of showcase who they are from a personality perspective. They're these little like pixies or robots, whatever you want to kind of think of them. They just go out, perform, succeed, win gold medals, and then, you know, the next crop moves in. But, you know, Simone is in her 20s now, still at the top of her game, very vocal. You know, Ali Reisman before her and some of the other girls that are kind of moving up are recognizing that they can be more than just an athlete on the floor. And I'm curious for you, do you think that if you were competing today that you would have been able to do those things? I don't think me as an athlete would have been able to do that. Like, I don't think I have the ability to kind of manage that, to be an athlete at that level and still be able to kind of like come out and speak so powerfully on topics and be so present on social media and on, you know, social issues in the way that these women are doing it. I'm curious if you think that you would have been able to do it if you had the platform in the way that social media allows for it today.
Wow, that's a really good question. In some ways, I think so, because I had to deal with a lot as an athlete. And that is, you know, I mean, there's a time when I was training and they didn't pick me for the group routine. There's a synchronized routine in rhythmic gymnastics. It's Olympic sport. That's what Aliane did. And they didn't choose me on the team this year for the World Championships. And I was like, you know, how come I'd been to the Worlds twice. I was on the top team. And when I went to the coach, I said, how come I'm not selected? Because everyone was surprised. She said, when do you stand out too much? What are we going to do with you? I was like, really? I mean, you're telling me this, that the only reason that I'm not going to the World Championship is because I'm Black. I mean, you guys got to figure this out. It's like, so that kind of pressure, unfortunately, we were promoting our sport because rhythmic was such a new sport. No one knew what it was. So when you're an athlete, you kind of have to deal with other things on top of it. I think I would have been able to handle it. I had to be able, it's not something you want to have to do, but if you are brought up and you have to deal with other things, I think athletes are more able to do it more than you think, mainly because, I mean, navigating social media now and this whole thing, I mean, Simone's got great people around her, I will say. I know how it goes, and that makes a difference as well. But, you know, she has a really tight family life. She's very grounded in one way, but you have to understand, Simone's been through a lot. And she's a fabulous gymnast. But, you know, she was in Ohio and her mother, and then she was adopted. I mean, she went through a lot. So when you go through a lot in your life and then you add the discipline of sport on top of that, I think it strengthens you and gives you the ability to voice certain things that affect you.
Yeah. I mean, to be able to, I'm just grateful that I'm alive and able to watch her perform and compete, because it's the kind of thing that you don't see. She's, you know, once in a generation kind of an athlete, if not more than that. And I'm just grateful to see it, and hopefully that she'll be at her peak again come this summer in Tokyo, and that everything runs smoothly and we get to witness her greatness one more time.
Yeah, and it's different these days too. I mean, we have this opportunity to watch her because of social media. Back in our day, all of us, I mean, it wasn't there, so it was easy to stay closed off in your own world and just train. And so hats off to these athletes that are able to kind of keep up with social media and be that voice there, but not let it take away from their training as well. But, you know, speaking of Simone and Gabby, do you guys watch The Masked Dancer, by the way?
I do not.
Well, and the reason why I asked, because if you don't, I think just last night, Gabby was actually unmasked, and she was the winner of that show. So if you guys don't know what it is, check it out. But it's really good exposure for gymnastics. But everyone was guessing it was either Simone or Gabby. But I was thinking Simone too, but I knew that Gabby's quite a bit taller than Simone. So you could tell that this individual was just wasn't tall, but was a little bit taller than probably Simone. So that was a pretty cool moment as well.
That I have to say, that's really cool, because I saw a little bit about Masked Dancer, and I just kind of didn't know that Gabby's the champion for Masked Dancer.
She's the champ. I mean, wow. Yeah, she's the champ. I mean, when you're the champ, you're the champ. That's just how it is. She
is the coolest thing ever. Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, and I got to give it to Gabby, because when you were saying, David, when she won, the impact that she had, and she did. So I've been doing my foundation probably, I don't know, 10 or so years, 15 before she won. When she won, I had no space for the amount of kids that wanted to come to gymnastics. Wow. I mean, we had a waiting list for like over 100 kids every season because of her impact. And then I don't think people realize that she made the Olympic team again. Like, she took off all this time. Mm-hmm. She was second in the world in 2015. And then, so it's hard with Simone being so dominant, but also to see how kind of fabulous, I mean, super fabulous Gabby was as an athlete. Like, to come back in gymnastics, doing 2 Olympics is like a big old thing. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's that. Thank you for that news.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was excited to see it, and she was actually in the finale with 2 professional dancers, and she was able to beat them. So it was really cool. But you mentioned when she won, and you feel like there was kind of an influx of kids coming into your program. And I wonder, have you also seen an influx of participation since CrossFit has been around? I mean, because that's the whole reason why Dave and I even work together. That's why we have, a career in the sports that we love, is because CrossFit exposed gymnastics and weightlifting so much. But have you noticed anything along those lines yourself?
Well, part of what we do is what we want to do is we want to train kids to understand about their body from when they're young, right? And so there are only so many places in gymnastics you can do. So what we do for most of our kids is to teach them to learn about their bodies, and gymnastics is one of the best things for just understanding strength ratio, how to manage it. So there will be, fortunately, as a lot of the students that have come through my program are going to appreciate and going to be attracted to CrossFit, no doubt. And CrossFit is extremely popular, I think, because, like you said, gymnastics is a popular thing, but I think it's the individual part of it that you can really challenge yourself, right? You want to be in a situation where you want to challenge your body and challenge what you can do and what you can achieve. And part of that comes from the gymnastics background, because that's how we're trained. But I think it's also very exciting to people that have any sports background, but especially sports that you're talking about. That CrossFit is really exciting because it gives them, again, that taste of achievement on specific things, which is really great. And that's, I think, is going to keep growing.
Now, on the foundation side, Wendy, you said is this the 25th year anniversary?
It is.
Congratulations, yep. 25 years. That's a huge milestone in and of itself. So that's amazing. You've seen kids grow up now, right? You've seen people go from young kids walking into the gym over the course of 25 years, now be adults, probably have their own kids.
Yep.
Do you have any specific stories about people that maybe have come back, who have continued to contribute to the community and to the foundation now that they've kind of become adults and have moved on to the next phase of their lives?
I do, and it's really exciting, because what happened, so our rhythmic coach is Alexis Page, and she started with our foundation when she was 7 years old, and it was down the block in Harlem, right? So she came, and actually, my husband had worked with her mother, and she was really flexible, so she came to our program, and she started with us, and she went on to become on the national team, the rhythmic national team, for like 3 or 4 years. We had to support her because, it was around 2008 when we had this whole, the economy went down. And so we had to sponsor her, seriously raise money just to send her to competitions. But now she's back as our head coach, which is so interesting because she so gets it. Because when the pandemic hit, I just had to stop everything and go to trying to save this organization, right? Applying for all these grants and applying for public funding, things like that. So I turned it over to my coaches. And she was amazing because she understood what our goal was, because she had lived it. So she's now, went away to college, but always come back. So what's nice for me is that I know that my coaches now, many of them, including my TNT coach, went through the program. they know what the training's right. Because the one thing about us is that we've always had to have the best training. It may not cost a lot, but we are just committed to doing good gymnastics. Other thing Nina said, and Wendy, no reason not to do good gymnastics. It's like, we're working all hard. But why do it if you're not going to do it the right way, right? It takes a lot of time and hard work. So we have those athletes. We have one of the girls that was on our rhythmic team, I don't know, in the early 2000s. She's in New York City Ballet. We have Nyala Hope. So this is a really great story. So Nyala went away and she is a stunt woman now. She was a stunt woman for Lupita Nyong'o in Black Panther.
Wow,
like she's
awesome.
Nice. Stunt woman, right? So it's been great that the kids that have come through our program, some of them have gone to dance companies, some of them done things like that. And some of them, bring their kids. I can't believe it. They're like, I took gymnastics at Wendy. I make me feel so old. I took gymnastics, here's my kid. But you're right, that happens. And what we feel most honored by is that we've kind of become an institution in Harlem, because there's just not a lot of places in New York to take gymnastics, one. And if you do, it's very expensive, two. Right. So people came to us and it found a place where people could experience gymnastics, right? I can afford to do this. And let me tell you, we get, because the scholarship folks, we didn't figure out, we have people that have like 4 or 5 kids. I'm like, you're raising 4 or 5 kids in New York.
Yeah, my goodness.
It's like, so we're allowing families that don't have access for their kids to take gymnastics. And so that's been really rewarding.
That's incredible. And that kind of leads my next question about really what is the goal of foundation? Is the foundation to create access and to give, because New York, like you said, gymnastics, you need a large space, right? You need a lot of equipment, things are expensive, you need good coaching. Is your goal with the foundation predominantly to give access within the city to people that normally wouldn't have it? Or are there some other goals that you're trying to achieve with the foundation as well within the sport?
It's really it's like the step. We have to do it like, gymnastics is aggressive. You got to be able to stretch and kick over before you do a cartwheel. It's the same thing. You have to give access. But the key that we do with our foundation is, if you have the determination and drive to become a better athlete and dedicate the time, we will take you all the way. So it's not just about doing beginner gymnastics. It's really our team kids, which we're keeping together. It's really important because we want to push excellence, right? We want to expose kids to it, but we want you to be pushed to be the best that you can. And so it's really quite twofold. Definitely access, but for those kids that want to go as far as they can, that's a really important thing for most anyone, right? If you have a talent, you don't want to be so, well, we don't offer that, you can't do it, or you can't do it because it costs money. You want to be in a situation where you can reach as far as you can go. And that's why it's important that my coaches, which are all top athletes, right? They are role models. It's very unusual in a gymnastic situation, not only to have it for our organization where most of the kids are Black and brown, the coaches are that way as well. And that's unusual in gymnastics, right? So they have the whole organization, everybody be successful athletes, everybody to be in an environment, because even though you can maybe take gymnastics other places, if you're one or two or one of the few Black athletes, it's a little bit more pressure and not as relaxing or comfortable. And so that's what we do. So to have access, to have role models where you work, and to really focus on excellence.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing more Black participation within rhythmic gymnastics now? Not just in artistic world, but specifically in the rhythmic world now as well?
Somewhat. So it kind of depends. So when you talk about access, especially for folks of color overall, it's more a financial situation. So there are a lot of Blacks that have money and they can do, lots of things, and they are coming up. And I think more now, because of social media, we see them, right? So we've been working really hard to focus Blacks in gymnastics during this Black History Month. But there are some, we just had Nastia out in Los Angeles. She just retired. She's a really great rhythmic gymnast. And they've come through over the years. I wouldn't say more overall, because gymnastics rhythmic is still relatively small, but I think people are now feeling more comfortable. It's like knowing about it, right? Yeah. So we kind of got to that point where you see rhythmic more often. And I think it can be more, but it's just expensive. It's like, the rhythmic coaches, it's about space. Like, who's got a high ceiling? I mean, we have a partnership, but it's one thing to do gymnastics, and then you want to have a high ceiling 40, 60 feet out here. right? So that makes it a little bit tougher. But yeah, they're more. I think it's always about giving people opportunities to do it and make it affordable. That's kind of where we need to be in gymnastics.
Yeah, I always think about like how many great athletes there would be in the sport of gymnastics if people saw it. Or, you know, I look at myself and just say like the reason why I chose gymnastics, not because like my family did gymnastics or because like I have this history of gymnastics. You know, the best gym for boys in the country was 3 blocks away from my house, and I could walk there. And I was just lucky enough to fall into a situation where they had a great boys program. So for me, like and I remember we moved from one gym to the other one that was 10-minute drive away. And my mom was like, I'm not driving 10 minutes to go, you know, take you to gymnastics. And then she realized that people were driving hours and hours from different states to come and train with us. She was like, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut and not speak of that again, you know? But for us, I was just lucky that it kind of fell into my lap, that I had access that closely to a good gym, great coaching, a good team atmosphere. And it's just not available to everybody. But if you do have that access, how many more people we're going to see do great things? How many more Simone Biles are we going to see because of the ability to actually join and participate?
No, I agree. And I think for gymnastics, it's really a thing for everybody, because for what I do, as I found out over the years, the middle part of gymnastics, like going to a YMCA, let's say, they're starting to get rid of their gymnastics because, you know, I don't know, I hate to say they kind of go to soccer. It's kind of a money thing. And they're not investing because, you know, gymnastics is expensive, right?
Yep.
So unfortunately, people that would be trying it in the middle level, like you have private gyms, which are more expensive and you probably have to drive to go to, unless you're lucky like you. And then they had this middle level, which was like a YMCA, a Boys and Girls Club, something like that. And then you have what I do, which is really more public funding. And so I think it's really important for our sport that people just get to try it no matter who you are, because it's a great sport. And like you said, you fell into it, but it's something that kids should be able to try. It's a foundational sport. I really think gymnastics is. It's like, you know, you should learn how to swim, you should learn how to martial arts, learn gymnastics.
I agree. That's why I do love USA Gymnastics slogan of begin here, go anywhere. It's like, it's not about, you know, becoming an Olympic athlete. It's about setting the foundation and using the skills that you learn in gymnastics to, who knows, become a weightlifter, say.
Yeah. Don't worry. I won't make you guys talk about weightlifting too much.
I love weightlifting. I tell you, it was Rudy. What was his name? There is a gentleman here in New York. It's interesting because when you have the smaller sports, right? The people, they're passionate about it. They're definitely passionate about it. And we had this at this really great venue because it was like on a stage, right? So, you know, in New York, we're promoting the Olympics. We're trying to make everything, ooh, wow, you know. They get really excited. But it was really nice that the community of weightlifters, you know, Cheryl, what's Cheryl's name? Cheryl's last name?
Cheryl Hayworth.
Oh my, well, we did a lot with the Women's Sports Foundation with Cheryl, right?
Yeah.
Fabulous. And she went to study. I haven't been in touch, but she was like an artist. She was like crazy. She was really great.
Chad's like best friends with Cheryl. So they
yeah, Cheryl's a Power Monkey coach as well.
Yeah, she's one of our coaches at Power Monkey too.
So give her my best. We love having her. So a lot to the Women's Sports Foundation, but I think she wanted to study art, like at Savannah Arts, right?
She did, yeah.
Yeah. So it was just nice to know and understand and really, like you said, because they were telling me the same thing. It's not powerlifting, and I don't know why people thought it was like bodybuilding, but I'm sure. But we love the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And really the great thing with the exposure that CrossFit has brought is, as you mentioned, Dave, now more people are realizing how much of a foundation it is. Whereas before, you know, when I was a kid or, you know, a teenager looking at gymnastics, it was seemingly only for those people that are good at gymnastics. You know what I'm saying? And it's easy to get that perception just about on anything. I mean, same thing's true for weightlifting. If you only ever see weightlifting in the Olympics, or you only ever watch or hear gymnastics when the Olympic comes around, it's easy to think that. So now what's great is that more people are seeing it on a foundational level, just for in general purposes. And so many kids, you know, through CrossFit are doing gymnastics and weightlifting. And I'm just excited to see what the future holds for these super athletes that we're breeding now through this process. But, you know, that makes me think about the future as well, Wendy. And, you know, with all the incredible things that you're already doing, that you've done with the foundation, is there anything that you would like to implement either differently or in addition to what you're doing, say within the next 5 to 10 years? Or do you just envision, continuing to do the solid work that you're already doing?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, what we've kind of looked at for us was, now at this point, I really want to have a legacy, because I want kids to be able to be doing it in another 25 years, and I don't plan on around doing it. So
Right.
that's what we're planning right now. But the other thing is really the space. So because like we're not in our gym right now, and it's because I have these partnerships with public spaces. So they're great when we have them, because we don't have to pay for the space, which allows us to do gymnastics. But the space wasn't allowed offered to us. So now what we really want to focus on in Detroit and in New York is to ensure that we have a gymnastic specific space. People, I know you're thinking that they would know things, but I tell people a gymnastics center is like a pool. You can only do gymnastics in it. They always ask me, oh, we can do this, we have basketball. I'm like, no, I need it just for gymnastics. And so I have, so for me, it's kind of a political thing, and I have to talk with developers to get our own space, but to have it funded publicly so that I can still provide the sport. Because you're right, it is, the cost of the space is a big deal. So that's one of our goals that we want to work towards. And then the other part, I would say from a programming standpoint, is as I told you, I really had an affinity for all non-traditional sports. And I do also, as much as gymnastics takes time, and I love gymnastics, I do like people to cross train. I mean, I think that kids shouldn't just do one sport. I want them to be in an environment where they try different things. And it's, you don't hear that from gymnastics that much, but I really do believe it's really important that kids try different things. So if I'm in a facility, a multi-sport facility where kids can go around and try different things, I think what you guys are doing is right. I love my sport, but I don't think you should just do one thing. I think you have to have an appreciation of how things work together. So ideally, as we move forward, I want to make sure that we have a space, that we have the funding that we can keep doing this, and that we support other sports, other non-traditional sports.
Absolutely. Sounds like you need to team up with Cheryl there, bring her in and have her teach the kids some weightlifting.
Totally. I do that a lot. It's really interesting. Over the years, I've done this thing we call National Girls Women's Sport Day, right? Or I did a girls sports clinic, and I would bring in everybody. We've done boxing, and we've done judo, and we had just all different sports. And what we do is we have girls try all the different sports, and also their caregiver, their mom, because what we found out in the community, it's sometimes hard for girls if you don't have a lot of financial success, you have other responsibilities like take care of your brother and sister and things like that. When I switched over to really coaching in the community, I mean, I had kids that have a lot of different challenges. We have kids in a homeless shelter, right? We got to get our kids here. We got to sign them up. We go to competition. We got to tell them where they're going. So there are other problems, but I love working with other female athletes, and tell Cheryl she is welcome anytime, because kids, I don't know, I think it's really, I love when they try these sports, like when you see it on TV, even though if you only see it, but when you see it live and you see the technique and you learn a little something, it's really empowering. So I would love to do that.
Well, you just you're up close and personal with a real person, or you meet the person and they become, not something that's so unattainable. So it's always a good fit for that, in-person view of it.
That's true. No, love it.
Well, Wendy, I feel like we're just touching kind of tip of the iceberg of all the things that you've done within the sport over the course of the last few decades. And I have a couple things to say. One, thank you for all that you do for the sport of gymnastics. It's a sport that I love. It's the sport that I've dedicated my life to. And, I aspire to contribute to the community in the same way that you have in so many, and, better the lives of so many people through the sport of gymnastics. So thank you, first of all. Second of all, I definitely have to say that I have to give a shout out to Shane Garrity, my partner with Paramonkey, who, of course, Shane, I think, is the one that gave you the ticket for 2012. And
yes. Shane. And I mean, there's so much we can talk about Shane, because
between acrobat and the stunt world,
Wendy Hilliard Foundation, no athlete, no gymnast been in New York hadn't taught with me at one point or another.
Oh yeah. Shane
Shane's the best.
is such a big part of the community as well in New York City, and between helping, through your foundation, and then also with Ray Shine Harris in New Jersey through Shine Tumblers and things like that. Shane definitely does everything that he can to help out the new community when it comes to gymnastics and sports. So,
Shane, love him. Hi, Shane.
yes, I've been trying to get Shane on the podcast for a while now, and he refuses to come on.
Ever since we started.
Really?
We've even tried to trick him into it when we were at camp that one time.
He refuses, but maybe one of these days. But before we get you out of here, a couple of last minute questions. The first one is kind of a formality, I believe. We always ask our guests this, and I think I know what we're going to get on this. But what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics? Just between me and Chad, we have a healthy competition going.
I got to go with gymnastics on this one.
Yeah,
Chad, I think you just got to get Cheryl on again, so that she can get another one on your box. Right?
Well, if she talks to Wendy too much before, then she might go with gymnastics. So we got to be careful.
Yes, I heard you do the splits once. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question number 2. Anybody that you think would be a good fit for the podcast that you've come across recently, or you think would be a good guest for us to have on?
Oh my gosh, so many, because I've been talking to athletes and different. I just was talking with Shayna Booth, which is so interesting. She's an acro sport athlete, world champion. Who on the? Oh, that I'm not ready. Just to talk about sports in general, or sports about gymnastics.
Anybody that you think would be good to have on?
Oh gosh.
I know it's always putting somebody on the spot.
It totally is. I mean, let's see. Okay.
You can come up with a list and you can send it over, because I'm sure.
I mean, there's so many people. You guys are doing such great work, and I want to thank you, and also everyone, because the gymnastics community has really been supporting me, and that's how we're able to do this. But also for you guys to support us, and what you're doing for the health of everyone. We totally appreciate that. I'll give you that list. I'll have to give you that.
Sounds good to me.
Well, and for this next question, if you can't think of one here, then you can send it over as well. But we always want to get a good book recommendation. Is there any that you've read recently or come across that you'd recommend to the listeners?
Wow, that's interesting. Well, I have to say, the latest book I've been reading is Cast, and it's intense. It's really talking about the racial history in the country, and it's powerful. Not easy, but it's really important, I think, to listen to. So I highly recommend that. That's on the New York Times bestseller. So that's the last one that I've been reading. I do have President Obama's book sitting up there, but I got to do one at a time. So yeah, there have been lots of different books, but that's the one that's last on my list.
Awesome. That's a great recommendation, and one I think that we should all look into and read, especially everything that's gone on this past year. So thank you for that, for sure. Before we get off here, once again, thank you so much, Wendy, for jumping on with us. It was a great conversation. Enjoyed having you. Do you have anything that you'd like to share with the listeners? Any parting words or anything you'd like to plug?
Well, and what I do is always support the foundation, but also I think for all during this time is like, let's all just be really kind with each other. I think that's really important. The one thing, it's nice, as tough as it's been, I'd love to be able to connect with people, and you got to take care of yourself, as I know you and your audience, it does all the time, which is great. But I just think, be kind to each other, and let's, as we get through this.
Awesome. Excellent.
And Wendy, really quickly, the website is wendyhilliard.org, just so people, if they find it, we'll put it in the show notes and everything, but just make sure we have that correct.
Okay. Yep. wendyhilliard.org.
Perfect.
Awesome, guys. And as you check that out, also be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. We're still doing the online Power Monkey Camp. And Dave, real quick, if you have any updates or wanted to mention anything about that.
Sure. We'll be finishing up this first group of Power Monkey Camp online participants at the end of the month. So you have another couple of weeks to sign up if you want to participate in this first group. And just go to academy.powermonkeyfitness.com if you want to check out what we're doing. It's a phenomenal online course, basically in line with what we do in person at our Power Monkey camps.
And the in-person Power Monkey Camp coming up here, sneaking up on us, Dave, here in just, 3 months now. So I'm looking forward.
Power Monkey Camp 15, first full week of May 2nd through the 8th. We have a great group of athletes and coaches coming out for that one too. So I highly recommend checking it out. If you've ever wanted to come to a Power Monkey camp, this is going to be a great one to come to.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to being back there. I can't wait. I wish it was next week and we could all be there together once again, but I'll wait. You know, I think all this has taught us a little bit of patience, but I'm also a little tired of being patient. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. And hopefully we can see some of you guys there or checking out the online version of that as well. But guys, also check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.